There we go. So we're going to continue with our Maseches Tamid. If we're using the Art Scroll Gemara in front of us, there are two ways to follow. In the front, we're on Chav Zayin Amid Aleph. We're midway through the page where we're at the two dots. And if you're in the back, it'll be 27A3. 27A3 in the back, Tamid, and it'll be the right-hand column in the middle where it says the Gemara continues its analysis. So again, in the front, it'll be Chav Zayin Amid Aleph at the two dots, where it says Chamisha al Chamisha. And if you're using the back, it's 27A3 in Tamid. Make sure it's Tamid and not Midos. And it'll be on the right-hand column, halfway down, where it says the Gemara continues its analysis. So let's see. The Gemara said, we were quoting the Mishnah from Maseches Midos. And it says, Chamisha al Chamisha Sha'arei Harabayas. There were 5 Levium who were standing guard at night for an honor guard at the 5 gates of the Temple Mount. If you flip back one page, you'll see a map. You'll see what that's talking about. If you see the map on the previous page on 27A2, you'll see there's a map of the Temple Mount of Harabayas. The outer wall denotes Harabayas, and you clearly see that there are 5 entranceways. On the south, there are 2 there. Both of them are titled 1. On the east, there's number 2. On the north, there's number 3, and on the west, there's number 4. So those are 5 Levium standing guard at those gates. And then the Mishnah continues, and it says, Mitocho, inside the walls, meaning once you're in Harabayas, Chamisha al Chamisha Shari Azara. So it says there were 5 at the 5 gates of the courtyard. So again, if you look back at that picture, there are 5 entrances leading into the courtyard that have. On the east, that would be number 5. That's the Levi who's standing guard at the gate that's going in. That's the Shar Niknor that's going into the Ezra's Kohanim. And the north, you'll see there's a Levi at number 7 and at number 10. 9, there's no one there. And on the south, you'll see at 12 and 14, there are Levium, no one at 13. So there are 5 Levium standing guard at the entrances to the Azara, to the courtyard of the temple. So going back to the Gemara that was quoting the Mishnah, and then it says, Arba al Arba Pinosav, Mibachutz. And there are also 4 at the corners of the courtyard, and they're outside. By the way, I realized I skipped a line in the Mishnah. It's a Chamisha al Chamisha Shari Arbayas. There are 5 at the 5 entrances to the Temple Mount, and then it goes Arba al Arba Pinosav. And there are 4 Levium at the corners, and they are Mitocho Ansad. So again, go back to that map. You see the 4 corners of Harabayas at the northeast, at the northwest, the southeast and southwest. You see there was a Levi, and those are standing inside of the Temple Mount. Contrast that to what the end of that Mishnah said, Arba al-Arba Pinosav, that within that, for the Azara, for the courtyard of the Beis Hamikdash, was also 4 Levium, but they were Mibachutz. So again, if you look back at that map, look at the northwest corner of the Azara, the courtyard. The Kohen is standing outside the courtyard, actually on the Harabayas territory. Same with the southwest, and same with the the south east, and then also the northeast. The Kohen is standing in the Ezra, the Levi is standing in the Ezra Nashim in both those. That's the Mishnah from Midos. Now the Gemara is going to explain it. So the Gemara says, Ma'ishna harabayis davdina mitocho, ma'ishna azara davdina mechutz. What's the difference in the corners, meaning the corners of the Levium on the Temple Mount, they're standing inside the Temple Mount precincts. But when it comes to Levium who are standing guard for the Azara in the corners, they're standing outside the Azara, outside the courtyard. So what's with the difference? So the Gemara says there's a simple answer. It says, Amri, they answered, Harabayis, when it comes to Levium who are standing guard on the Temple Mount, so they were still allowed to be inside. Ditama voy mesav. If they got very tired and they want to sit, there's no problem. So they could sit because they're not in the Azara, they're not in the courtyard. There's no halachic problem with them having a seat. So that's why they could be inside the Temple Mount. However, Azara, so therefore, Amina Mitocho, that's why we had them set up. The guards were on the inside. There's no problems that could arise. Azara, but as far as the Levium were standing, the honor guard in the courtyard, so Ditama, Boila Mesav, if those ones got tired and they want to sit down, Lo Matzi Yesef, they're not allowed to sit because they're in the Azara, they're in the courtyard. Damar Mar, because it was taught, Ein Yeshiva Azara Elo Malche Beis David Bovad. The only ones who were allowed to sit in the courtyard in the Azara, the Beis Hamikdash, were people, members of the Davidic dynasty. Anyone other than that was not allowed to sit down out of great respect for the Azara. Therefore, this was the night shift. People it was understood that they could get tired, might need to sit for a couple minutes. Therefore, so they said anyone who doesn't need to be in the Azara, it's better that they're not in the Azara. That explains why those Leviim in the corners, those were outside the Azara, they were on the Temple Mount. Let's see further. So again, we're continuing. If you're using the back, we're on 27.8.4, the second paragraph on the left. Amar Mar, so the masters taught, look at that Mishnah. It said, Chamisha al-Chamisha Shari Azara. It said that there were 5 Leviim who were standing guards at the 5 gates of the Azara. Now again, if you look back at that diagram, you'll see that there were actually 7 gates of the Azara. Look on the east wall, we have a Levi there at number 5. So there's gate number 1. On the south wall, we have 12, 13, and 14. There's only a Levi at 12 and 14. And on the northern wall, you have 10, 9, and 7. So you've got a Levi at 7, you got a Levi at 10, and there's no Levi at 9. So you see that there were clearly 3 on the top, 3 on the north, 3 on the south, and then 1 at the east. That gets you 7, and there's 5 Leviim. So why does the Mishnah say, the Gemara is going to want to know, why does the Mishnah say there were 5 gates and 5 guards? So that's what Gemara says now. Chamisha Shara Mu'ud Aviv Azara. Were there really only 5 gates in Azara? For a minute, I'll ask you a contradiction. Shiva Sharma Azara. We have elsewhere a Mishnah that taught us in Midos that there were actually 7. Shlosha B'Tzafa, there was 3 in the north, as we saw in the diagram. Shlosha B'Daram, there were 3 in the south, as we saw in the diagram. V'Chav Mizrach, 1 of these. That adds up to 7. So why is it that the Mishnah says there were 5 and only 5 guards? There should be 7 guards. So the Gemara answers, Amar Abaye, you're right, there were 7 gates going into the Azar, into the courtyard, but 2 of them did not need a guard. So go back to that diagram. That's talking about gate number 9 and gate number 13. 9 is on the north, 13 is on the south. These were both called the Shara Karban, how they would bring Karbanos, animals or Karbanos into the Azara, some through the north, some through the south. The reason those did not need a guard is because look where those doors are, those gates are. They're in between other gates. So you had a Kohen to the right and to the left. Let's say up north, you had a Levi rather. A Levi at gate number where it says number 10 and number 7. And you also on the south had at 12 and 14. You didn't need a guard in the middle. Those ones who were on either side could handle their doors, and that one in the middle, that's the simplest answer to this. Why, if there were 7 gates, there was only 5 guards? Comes along Rava, and Rava says, I have a different answer. My answer is going to be, it's a machlokas. It's not agreed by all how many gates, functioning gates, there really were going into the Azara. So Rava says, Tanai, it's actually a machlokas Tanai. We're going to see it's a 3-way machlokas. How many gates there were? So our Mishnah says that there was only 5 guards. That's going to the opinion. There were only 5 gates. But I'll show you, there was an opinion out there that says there were 7 gates. I'll show you an opinion out there that says there was 8 gates. So it says, Rava Amar Tanai, it's actually machlokas Tanaim. The Tanya we learned in a brisa. You're not allowed to have fewer than 13 managers. The manager's job, the Mefarshim say, where they were entrusted to keep order in the Azara, in the courtyard. And then it says, Mishiva Amar Klin. And who are the ones, the supervisors in charge of those 13 Gizbarim, in charge of 13 managers? You had 7 Amar Klin, 7 supervisors. Rav Nassan says, no, in Poskim Shlosh Asher Gizbarim, I agree there's 13 managers. Can I get Shlosh Asher Sharim? Because he says he was of the opinion there was actually 13 gates. Dal Chamisha Darabayas. How do you get 13 gates? Okay, take away the 5 that were going out to Harabayas, meaning that real external gates going out onto the Temple Mount. So 13 minus 5 will bring you to 8. So he says, Pashulu Tamnod Azara. That remains 8 for the courtyard. So meaning what? I found one Tana who holds there was actually 8 gates going into the Azara. So I see there obviously was a Tana who held there was 8 going into the Azara. So there's also a Tana out there who says that there were 7. That's like ours. And then so I'll tell you on the same token, there was a Tana out there who held there was only 5 functioning gates going into the Azara. So that's the way Rava deals with this. Don't ask me a kasha that I've got one Mishnah that seems to imply that there were 7, another that says there 5. I don't have to reconcile. They're going according to 2 different Tanaim. That's how Rava deals with that, as opposed to Abaye, who had you might say, a simpler answer. All right, so let's get back into it now. The Mishnah now said, the Gemara says, let's go back to analyzing our Mishnah. Our Mishnah told us about the young Kohanim who were sleeping in the Beis Hamikdash. The Kohanim who were going to be on duty the next day. So we said the elder Kohanim slept on those stone shelves that were coming out of the wall in the Beis Hamikdash. The younger Kohanim, they took off their big day kahuna, put them under their head like in a pillowcase to sleep, and they slept on the floor. They rolled out a sheet or a mat on the floor, and that's how they slept. So the Mishnah now says as follows: the Mishnah taught us that the young Kohanim who slept on the floor in the Beis Hamikdash, they did not sleep in their big day kahuna because that would have been disrespectful. So the Gemara says we can make the following inference, the following diuk. Sheino delo. It was sleeping that they were not allowed to do in the big day kahuna. Avol hiluch ma'alchem. But let's say they were not on duty, they had a break, and they want to just go for a pleasure stroll. No problem wearing their big day kahuna, even though they're wearing them, having nothing to do with the function of acting like a Kohen or doing avoda. That's what the Mishnah seems to imply, that the only problem would have been to sleep in them, not to wear them for purposes outside of the avoda. So that's right. Doesn't that seem to be? So shamat mina, we learn from this, big day kahuna nitnu lanaspan. So this would seem to imply that a Kohen, the one thing he can't do is sleep in him, because that's really, letting down his hair. That's really, that might lead to some disrespect. He can't really watch himself what he's doing when he's sleeping. He might break wind, he might pass out, who knows what he's going to do, but he might have a seminal emission while he's sleeping. However, if he's just taking a stroll wearing his big day kahuna, that should be okay. There's much less disrespect to the big day kahuna. That's what the Mishnah seems to imply. So the Gemara says, no, I can reject that. It says, Amri, it says, no, hu adin afilu hiluch namilo. I'll tell you really, I'll make the case that it would be wrong for a Kohen to wear the big day kahuna just to go for a pleasure stroll. Meaning, anytime a Kohen is not doing the avoda, he should not be wearing big day kahuna. What's the problem? The problem being, where the Mefarshim say would be me'ila. Me'ila means making use of hektish for non-avoda, non-kodesh purposes. So here's the big day kahuna. They were meant to be worn, adorn a Kohen during the avoda, and now here's a Kohen who's wearing them for non-avoda purposes. That seems to be me'ila. So it says, really, I'll tell you, your Kohen's not allowed. So what do I do with my Mishnah? The Mishnah said the only thing he's not allowed to do is sleep in it. So it says, the Mishnah says that a Kohen's not supposed to sleep in the big day kahuna, which implies he could go for a stroll. That's not true. He's also not allowed to stroll in it. So why did the Mishnah say he shouldn't sleep in it? Because there was a specific halacha that the Mishnah wanted to teach us a little bit later, which is what? Is that the Mishnah wants to teach us, what did the Kohanim do when they took off their clothes? They folded them up neatly, they put them in a pillowcase, and then they put them under their heads, and they would sleep on them. So because the Mishnah wanted to tell us this, which again, I would have thought even that there's some disgrace, because while he's sleeping, the Kohen might pass gas or something like that. Even if he's not wearing them, he's using them as a pillow. I may have thought that was somewhat disgraceful. So that's why the Mishnah had to say this, but 100% he's not supposed to stroll in them either. That's why the Mishnah said that about he's not supposed to sleep, to contrast it that while he's not allowed to sleep in them, he is allowed to put them under his head when he's sleeping. So now the Gemara says, no, that doesn't make sense. But gufa kakasha, that would be a problem too. It says, if you're telling me a Kohen's not allowed to sleep in them, he's not allowed to wear them for just going for a stroll, then why is he allowed to use them as a pillow? You're telling me he's not allowed to use them for personal benefit, anything outside the avoda, so then why would he be allowed to use them as a pillow? So the Mishnah says, Shema Mina, what do we see? Big day kuna nitlu. If he's using them as a pillow, that seems to imply he is allowed to benefit from it in a non-avoda use. So the Gemara says, no, Ema neged Rosheim. The Mishnah did not mean that he would fold them up and put them under his head to use them as a pillow. And instead, it meant he folds them up and he puts them near his head, so he'll have them ready to go the next day. That's what the Mishnah meant. Mishnah never meant to say he uses them as a pillow. Amar Papa says, Shema Mina, by the way, but if that's true, that I'm allowed to, a Kohen is allowed to fold him up and put him near his head, even though he's not going to sleep on him, but we're not nervous that he's going to roll over in the course of sleep and put his head on him, which might be disrespectful. We're not worried about that. So I can learn from this as well. Shema Mina, tefillin minat sad shoyin. Is that Amar Papa says, is that Shema Mina, tefillin minat sad shoyin. Is that if, let's say, a person takes their tefillin off, and they just want to lay their heads down to get a rest during the day, they're allowed to put their tefillin near their heads, and we're not concerned the guy's going to roll over and fall on his tefillin and sleep on them. We're not nervous about that. There's no fear about this. And now just to end this stuff, the Mishnah says, this also makes a lot of sense to say that the Kohen wasn't sleeping on them. Why? And this raises the point which I thought would have been raised earlier, but it says, it makes sense the Kohen wasn't using them as a pillow to sleep on it. Why? If you're saying that he actually put them under his head and he slept on them, okay, even if you want to make the argument that he's allowed to use them in non-avoda purposes, you got a different problem. Typically, their shotness. There was something in the big day kuna, the avnei, and the special belt they wore had both wool and linen in it. And the only time a Kohen was allowed to wear that was for the avoda. Outside of the avoda, that's shotness. No one's allowed to make use of that. So too, not only would he not be allowed to wear it, he wouldn't have been allowed to use it as a pillow. So now that seems to prove the point that it must be he wasn't sleeping on it. Rather, what the Mishnah means is that he had a keneged rosha, he had by his head, so they'd be ready to go in the morning. All right, let's pause here. We'll continue tomorrow night, God willing, on the next stuff on Chav Zayin Amud Beis 27b1. All right, have a good evening. We'll say a Kaddish Rabbanan. Rabbi Chanani ben Akash Omer Ratzah Kadosh Baruch